Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the most pivotal battles in history, and I'm your host, General Biography. Today, we're going to explore one of the most significant yet often overlooked conflicts in American history, the Battle of Blue Licks, fought in 1782. This battle marked a turning point in the American Revolutionary War, particularly on the western frontier, where Native American tribes and British loyalists clashed with American settlers. As we embark on this journey through time, imagine yourself standing amidst the lush wilderness of 18th century Kentucky. The air is thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers, and the sounds of wildlife echo through the valleys. Yet, beneath the serene landscape lies a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and competing interests that would eventually lead to one of the most pivotal battles in American history. To understand the Battle of Blue Licks, we must first set our sights on the broader context of the American Revolutionary War. By 1782, the war had been raging for 7 years, with the Continental Army having secured crucial victories at Saratoga in 1777 and, more recently, at Yorktown in 1781, which effectively ended British hopes of crushing the rebellion. However, the British and their Native American allies continued to wage a fierce campaign on the frontier, aiming to disrupt American settlement and trade. The western frontier was a hotbed of activity, with both the Americans and the British vying for control. The region was home to numerous Native American tribes, including the Shawnee, Miami, and Cherokee, who had allied themselves with the British in an effort to resist American expansion. These tribes had lived in the region for generations, with their own distinct cultures, traditions, and ways of life. However, as American settlers began to arrive, tensions escalated and conflicts arose over land ownership, trade, and territorial rights. In the Ohio River Valley, the conflict took on a particularly brutal form. Native American tribes launched raids against American settlements, hoping to stem the tide of westward expansion. The Americans, determined to secure their claim to the land, organized militias to defend their homes and push back against the Native American and British forces. It was in this context that legendary frontiersman Daniel Boone played a key role in the early settlement of Kentucky. Boone's experiences, including his capture by the Shawnee in 1778 and his subsequent escape, had given him a deep understanding of the region and its people. He had learned to navigate the treacherous terrain, communicate with the Native American tribes, and adapt to the harsh conditions of the frontier. In June 1782, a large force of Shawnee, led by the influential leader Blue Jacket, attacked the settlement of Bryan's Station, near present-day Lexington, Kentucky. The attack was repelled, but not without significant losses on both sides. The settlers knew they had to act swiftly to prevent further raids and to punish their attackers. It was in this context that Colonel Benjamin Logan, a seasoned military leader and one of the founders of Kentucky, decided to lead an expedition against the Shawnee. As Colonel Benjamin Logan assembled his forces in response to the attack on Bryan's Station, he knew that a swift and decisive campaign was necessary to deter further raids and protect the settlers. The memories of the previous attacks still lingered, and the colonists were eager for revenge and security. On August 15, 1782, Logan set out with a sizable force of around 350 men, including experienced frontiersmen like Daniel Boone, with the intention of striking at the heart of Shawnee territory. The expedition marched northwards, following the trail left by the Shawnee raiders as the sun beat down on them and the dense forest loomed ahead. As they journeyed deeper into Native American land, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. The men were aware that they were being watched, and the silence was only broken by the sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs. Logan knew that his men had to be prepared for anything, and he urged them to remain vigilant, scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. On August 18, they arrived at the Licking River, where they encountered a smaller force of Native American warriors. The Americans pushed forward, intent on engaging the enemy. But as they crossed the river, they found themselves in a vulnerable position, with steep bluffs rising on either side like giant sentinels. The terrain was treacherous, and Logan's men had to navigate through the dense underbrush, their eyes fixed on the ridges above. It was here, at the Blue Licks, that the Shawnee and their allies had laid a trap for the unsuspecting colonists. As Logan's men ascended the bluffs, they were met with a hail of gunfire and arrows, which cut down many of the attackers. The Americans, realizing too late that they had walked into an ambush, struggled to regroup and respond effectively. The sound of muskets and screams filled the air as the men scrambled to find cover behind trees and rocks. In the chaos of battle, Daniel Boone played a crucial role, using his knowledge of the terrain to help guide the American forces and exploit any weaknesses in the Native American defenses. Despite being outnumbered, the Shawnee warriors fought fiercely, employing hit-and-run tactics that allowed them to inflict significant casualties on the Americans. Boone's experience and instincts proved invaluable, as he directed the men to fall back and regroup, attempting to outmaneuver the enemy. As the battle raged on, Colonel Logan found himself facing a difficult decision: to press on and risk further losses, or to fall back and regroup. He chose the former, urging his men forward in an attempt to break through the Native American lines. However, this proved to be a costly mistake, as the Americans were repeatedly repelled by the determined defenders. The Shawnee warriors had carefully prepared their positions, using the terrain to their advantage, and Logan's men were unable to dislodge them. One of the most defining moments of the Battle of Blue Licks came when a group of American militiamen, led by Captain John Todd, attempted to outflank the Shawnee and attack them from behind. As they crested a small ridge, they were met with a withering volley of gunfire that cut down many of their number, including Captain Todd himself. The captain's fall was a significant blow to the American morale, and it marked a turning point in the battle. The battle was fierce, but relatively short-lived, lasting only around 2 hours. In the end, the Americans were forced to retreat, leaving behind many of their dead and wounded comrades. The Shawnee, having successfully defended their territory, had won a significant victory, one that would give them a temporary reprieve from the encroaching tide of American settlement. As the surviving Americans made their way back to Bryan Station, they were met with a mixture of shock and grief at the scale of their losses. As the Americans retreated from the battlefield, the eerie silence was punctuated only by the anguished cries of the wounded and the dying. The once pristine wilderness was now scarred by the devastating consequences of war. The Blue Licks, a tranquil stream that had given its name to this fateful encounter, now ran red with the blood of the fallen. The Americans were left to ponder the significance of their defeat, a crushing blow that would reverberate throughout the region for years to come. Estimates suggested that nearly half of the American force had been killed or wounded, a staggering toll that would have broken the spirit of a lesser people. The Shawnee, on the other hand, had suffered relatively few casualties, and their victory had given them a much-needed boost in morale. As they tended to their dead and celebrated their triumph, the Shawnee warriors couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and vindication. They had defended their land against overwhelming odds, and their bravery would be remembered for generations to come. In the aftermath of the battle, the Americans regrouped and reassessed their strategy. They realized that they had underestimated the determination and cunning of the Shawnee, and that they would need to adapt their tactics if they were to succeed in their campaign to settle the region. The battle had also highlighted the importance of effective leadership, as Colonel Logan's decision to press on despite being outnumbered had proved disastrous. This fateful choice would be debated by military historians for centuries, a cautionary tale about the perils of underestimating one's enemy and overextending one's forces. As the Americans licked their wounds and reflected on their defeat, they began to appreciate the complexities of the Shawnee society and the depth of their attachment to the land. The Shawnee were not just fierce warriors. They were also skilled hunters, farmers, and traders who had lived in harmony with the wilderness for generations. Their connection to the land was spiritual, cultural, and economic, and they would stop at nothing to defend it against encroaching settlers. Despite their defeat, the Americans did not give up. They continued to push into the region, using a combination of diplomacy and force to gradually wear down the Shawnee resistance. In 1786, the Shawnee signed the Treaty of Fort Finney, which ceded much of their land in present-day Ohio to the United States. This treaty marked a significant turning point in the history of the region, as it paved the way for large-scale American settlement and the eventual decline of the Shawnee Nation. The Treaty of Fort Finney was a masterclass in strategic diplomacy, as the Americans leveraged their military superiority to negotiate a favorable agreement. The Shawnee, realizing that continued resistance would be futile, opted to secure the best possible terms, hoping to preserve some semblance of their sovereignty and way of life. However, The treaty ultimately proved to be a flawed compromise, as it failed to account for the long-term consequences of American expansion and the displacement of Native American communities. Today, the Battle of Blue Licks is remembered as a pivotal moment in the history of the American West. As historian Colin Calloway has noted, the Battle of Blue Licks was a reminder that the American Revolution was not just a struggle for independence from Britain, but also a struggle for control of the continent. This battle, often overlooked in popular accounts of American history, holds a profound significance as a symbol of the complex and often fraught relationship between European settlers and Native American communities. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.